Everyone. Please take your seats so we can start. So welcome to this side event on the development and transfer of technology, and more specifically on supporting the implementation of the technology action plans. So we have distinguished panel with us. Some of the panelists are sitting here and others are with the audience, which I will invite at the time of their presentation. But let me just say briefly, as we talk about the success of climate change in general, following the agreement we had in Paris, and now we're talking about the implementation of that agreement. Technology is very much at the heart of realizing that. And for years, countries have been carrying out their technology needs assessment to determine what is it that they need in terms of support, in terms of capacity, and in terms of hard technologies to help them to face the challenges of climate change, i.e. to adapt to them, and also to help reduce their emissions. So the TNAs really play a crucial role in this process. And as countries are also coming in with their national determined contributions, to say what is it that they will bring to reduce the emissions and adapt to climate change, the TNAs again would have a role really to play in supporting countries implement their NDCs, implement their national action plans as well, to help achieve the overall climate objective. So this is just a brief introduction to set up the importance really of the TNAs and technology in general. So we're very honored really to have with us Carlos Fuller, who is the chair of the Substar, and he's a dear old friend as well, because Carlos and I used to co-chair the technology negotiations, so it's really a pleasure to see you here. And Carlos has many years of experience in technology, has been very supportive in this process. He's been the voice of the Caribbeans actually on technology and taking part in so many meetings and side events, and also the negotiation supporting this. So Carlos is from the Belize, so he's from the Belize delegation. He's the chair of Substar, as I said, and he has a lot of experience on technology. So we're really delighted that you're here to kick off this meeting and highlight the importance of the TNAs or technology in general. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Zitouni, and let me thank you for inviting me to open this event, and I'm glad you have not forgotten me as you've moved on to bigger and better things. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished colleagues, it is my pleasure to open the UNFCCC side event on supporting and implementation technology action plans, or TAPs. As you are all well aware, technology was strongly captured in the Paris Agreement in its Article 10, where parties share a long-term vision on the importance of fully realizing technology development and transfer in order to improve resilience to climate change and to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Article 10 of the Paris Agreement also established a technology framework to provide guidance to the work of the technology mechanism in promoting and facilitating enhanced action on technology development and transfer in order to support the implementation of the Paris Agreement in pursuit of the long-term vision. To operationalize the Paris Agreement, the COP in its decision 1CP21, paragraph 67, requested that the technology mechanism should A, facilitate undertaking and updating technology need assessments, or TNAs, and implement the results via bankable projects. B, provide enhanced finance and technical support. C, assess technologies that are ready for transfer. And D, enhance enabling environments for and address barriers to the development and transfer of environmentally and socially sound technologies. I am pleased to open this side event since, as Zitouni has mentioned, I have been following the development of the TNA process and of its results since its inception in 2001. The TNA process successfully went through two generations. The former managed by the UNDP and the UNEP, the latter managed by UNEP. Its methodology evolved significantly and could be an example for other assessment processes. Implementation of its results is advancing, although there's further potential to close the implementation gap of well-drafted technology action plans and project ideas. This side event will provide a snapshot of implementation ambitions of 3 countries to highlight factors of success and also the remaining challenges. The existing finance and technical supporting mechanisms could foster implementation efforts of countries in the near future. Possible developments of new mechanisms, such as project preparation facilities, could be a solid part of the TNA and TAP processes in the future. Let me wish you an informative and inspiring event. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Carlos. That's very nice and very relevant introduction in highlighting particularly the Article 10 of the Paris Agreement and why technology is really critical in enhancing technology transfer, but also the long-term vision, as you said. And thanks for highlighting also the key issue of the implementation of TNAs. So what we're going to hear from the next speakers is some case studies on the implementation of TNAs, and to share with you some of their lessons learned. And what I'm going to do in these presentations is I'm going to allow 2 presentations, and then I'll open the floor for 1 or 2 questions before we move on to the other 3 presentations. And I would like to ask all the speakers, you have 10 minutes allocated to you. But if you could speak for less than 10 minutes, say 8 minutes, that would be fantastic. So we can have more time with the audience to ask questions or make any comment, particularly on how they see the importance of TNAs for the implementation of the Paris Agreement in particular. So we'll have 2 presentations. We'll have a short break, if you like, to ask questions or have comments, and we move on to the other 3. Carlos, you have some points, so please feel free. But we're really delighted that you're here with us and you opened this side event. Thanks very much for that. So it gives me great pleasure now to introduce our first speaker, Sarah Trarap, who is a senior researcher at the UNEP DTU partnership. So Sarah has been working on TNAs for years, actually, since 2010, and working particularly also on technologies for adaptation. And in terms of implementation of TNAs, Sarah has been working particularly on assessment of projects in Africa and the Middle East region. So she brings with her a lot of wealth in these areas, in particular on the implementation. So I'll hand over to you, Sarah. You have the easy task of doing your presentation in 8 minutes so that everyone can follow. No, you've got 15. Sorry, you've got 15. So you can do 12 before we move on to the other. So over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And also thank you very much to the organizers for inviting UNEP DTU partnership to share our experiences with implementing the Global Technology Needs Assessment Project, which is funded by the GEF and implemented by UNEP through the UNEP DTU partnership. So just to frame our discussions here today and to start with some background, what are we actually talking about when we're talking about technology needs assessments? Well, it's a country-driven activities that identify technology priorities within mitigation and adaptation sectors. And countries are working through their processes. Firstly, they identify key sectors, then within the sectors they identify and prioritize key technologies for each of the sectors. Typically countries are focusing on 2 sectors for adaptation and 2 for mitigation, and via this process countries are identifying key barriers for the transfer and diffusion of selected priority technologies, and through this work they provide background information which generate the final products, which are the technology action plans. And just to illustrate why is it important and why do we talk so much about technologies, I think this is quite well illustrated in an analysis of the recent submitted INDCs, where we could actually see that non-Annex 1 countries raised the support for technologies. 70% of the parties actually raised this issue in their INDCs, and you can say that they also requested another number of issues related to technologies through their INDCs. So just to illustrate the importance that this is given in countries' work. The scope of the Global Technology Needs Assessment Project, well, from 2009 to 2013, it supported 36 countries across Europe, no, not Europe, Asia, CIS countries, Africa, Middle East, and Latin America and Caribbean. And we are currently in the second phase of the project, supporting 24 countries, also across all the regions. And we have a third phase of this project starting next year. It has been approved by the GEF. And this next round of TNAs is focused only on LDCs and small island development states. So how do the countries actually carry out the technology needs assessments? It's focused on three major steps. As mentioned, it firstly identifies and prioritizes the sectors and technologies through stakeholder involvement, working groups, working with the national TNA teams. Then after this identification and prioritization of technologies, they proceed with the barrier analysis and enabling framework, and then finally the technology action plans. So a technology action plan is basically built on the thorough assessment that countries are doing on their priority technologies. And the technology action plans actually outline the key actors for implementing such a technology action plan, the timescale for for implementing these actions in the action plan, and also how much would it cost and which activities are required to actually see this technology action plan being rolled out. So this is not only focused on, for example, a single project, but it includes enabling activities which are actually needed to make this technology transferred and diffused in the country. So how do we actually work within this project? We have different elements, and we have the technical support, which is, we have a whole package of methodology which is provided to the countries. We work through regional centers, and I'm also happy that I see representatives from the regional centers here today. We have capacity building workshops in the regions. We have also technical support missions to the countries being part of this process. We have a startup mission, but then throughout the process, countries can request a technical support mission from the regional centers, which can support various elements which the country requests. Then, of course, we have the implementation, which is in the country. We have a steering committee for the country, which we often see would be the climate change committee, if this exists, or another cross-ministerial committee. Then we have a national Tna coordinator, and I also see many of the Tna coordinators here among us today. And we have a team of national Tna consultants, typically working on the different sectors for adaptation and mitigation. And we have also national working groups within each sector, which are part of the process from identifying technologies, from the prioritization of technologies, and throughout the barrier analysis and enabling frameworks. And then we also have a communication and outreach component, which we have a website where we have a database where countries can access technologies, information on those, and we have various information. And just to show how we are actually working with the centers across the regions, we have centers in Asia collaborating with us in implementation of the project, in Eastern Europe, in Africa and Middle East. We have 2 in Africa, 1 for the Anglophone group of countries, 1 for the Francophone. And we also have 2 regional centers working with us in the Latin America region. So as part of the methodology and the support for countries for the assessment of technologies, we have a number of guidance documents. We have, first of all, the process guidance, which is providing information on the tools for prioritization of technologies. We have guidance on stakeholder processes, on barrier analysis, and we also have guidance on economic assessments of barriers. And as the latest process guidance, we have the Technology Action Plan guidance, which was elaborated by the Technology Executive Committee. And this is it was released in May, and we just have received the French translation. So this is now also available through our website. So apart from the process guidances, we also have a number of sector guidances, both for mitigation and for adaptation. For mitigation, we have agriculture, buildings, and transport sector. For adaptation, we have coastal zones, water, and agriculture. And then we also have finance guidebooks separately for adaptation and mitigation. So throughout the Technology Needs Assessment project, we of course collaborate also with a number of other institutions, and CTCN is also having a significant role here. UNFCCC partnership is based in the same offices as the CTCN in Copenhagen, Denmark, so we have a very close collaboration with the CTCN. We work with the NDEs. We encourage the countries to have their NDEs as the Tna coordinators as well, so that we try to synergize between the different opportunities that exist. And then CTCN has the opportunity of supporting countries, putting in requests to the incubator program, which can step in at different stages of the Tna process and support countries in addition to what the Technology Needs Assessment project is providing. Then the CTCN has also the mandate to take up the technology action plans and provide support to take these action plans further, because when we have the final stages of the Tna process with the technology action plans, there is still some gap of these plans being implemented. So this is where also CTCN has a significant role in taking up these technology action plans and providing further support. Then we have a very close collaboration to the Climate Change Secretariat in Bonn, collaborating through various activities, also in the organization of workshops, etc. So where do we see the technology needs assessments going from here? Well, from the first countries conducting their TNAs within this global GEF Tna project. These countries were not as such doing their technology needs assessments in synchronization with the INDCs as we have seen the newer countries doing. But we also see that countries have used their TNAs actually for informing their work when they were preparing their INDCs. And so just to show you some trends of where we could see that the technology needs assessment could actually contribute for the implementation of NDCs. And these are just examples, and I'm looking very much forward to hear more today through the presentations, how countries are actually using their TNAs to inform the NDC processes and the opposite way around. And just a final remark, we often hear that we would like to see more results such as bankable projects being implemented coming out from the Tna process. And I must say that something that we also appreciate very much that the countries are using the Tna results for is that they are informing their national strategies with the information generated through the TNAs. And they are also very much used in a variety of other activities. So we see the TNAs are not only leading to bankable projects, but to a whole variety of activities that the countries are benefiting from. And this, we have just collected some of the stories coming out from the technology needs assessments in this new brochure. And these are also displayed here on the walls as posters. And I think that the brochure will also, there will be a few hard copies available after this session, but it's also available through the UNFCCC website, and also from TT Clear, I think it will be made available. And we have a QR code on one of the posters down there, so you can download it directly. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you for sticking to the time as well. You highlighted a number of points, particularly with relation to the main message, I think, from your presentation is the fact that countries have support available to them. So you highlighted the guidebooks that support countries to implement their TNAs. And also you showed in your presentation the existing collaboration with CTCN and the UNFCCC secretariats as well to take these technology action plans further. And as you said, the technology action plans, they do highlight the actors and the costs associated with those as well. So thanks for highlighting those. Let me now move on to some case studies and how some countries implemented their technology action plans. And I'll start with Senegal. And it's a great pleasure to introduce our colleague El Hadji Mbaye, who's the director of Afrique Energy Environnement. And he's at a consultant firm in Senegal. So El Hadji has been involved in the technology negotiations for a number of years, and he's been taking part in the climate negotiations. He has a lot of experience in this field, particularly being one of the core team members of the LDC group. So we look forward to hearing from the experience of Senegal. Again, I will stop you if you go beyond the 10 minutes, and I want to give the audience 5 minutes to ask some questions or make remarks. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I try to go very quickly. Good afternoon. First, I want to apologize on behalf of Madeleine, our focal point. She was supposed to make the presentation here, but she has some other constraints and couldn't make it. The presentation she prepared is in French, but I will present it in English. Just we'll talk about, for the sake of time, we'll not go through the Senegalese presentation. We'll go directly to the technology priority and the implementation of our TAP. So you'll have in Senegal, we have many problems related to our vulnerability to climate change adverse effects. And in our emission also, our main sector for the emission is the energy sector, followed by agriculture, and at least the waste sector. And we adopt and ratify the convention, the KP, and the Paris Agreement also. And we also prepare our our initial first and second national communication, and are working on the third one. We made our NDC and we had a national action plan, and we prepare in 2012 our TNA. And within our TNA, we work on two sectors in the mitigation sector: the renewable energy and energy efficiency at the household level. And under the renewable energy, we focus on PV, CSP. We work on wind power, biomass, but for industry, and also in hydro. And for the building sector, we had some related to the construction itself and others related to the equipment within the building. And on the adaptation side, we had the water resource mainly and agriculture. And the main constraints we face in preparing our technology need assessment were related to the budget we had. Because as you know, for all countries that prepare their TNAs, we were not enough resource, so we have to select only 2 sectors within the mitigation sector and 2 sectors within the adaptation sector. So we have just enough resource to deal with 4 sectors. It's why it was limited. That is one limitation we had. But it was the main one. And in some countries also, it was the lack of information or background studies related to the sector to be studied. And we made that, but in our technology action plan, we have identified, because we work with all the stakeholders, it was a very inclusive process. And by that way, in our technology action plan, we identify the structure that will support and implement the project we have identified or programs. And also, we did it in all the different sectors we have identified. And it's why just after that, those sectors, when the CTCN was ready and in action, those sectors submitted requests to the CTCN to go further in the project and program that were identified within our technology action plan. Because in the technology action plan, in the TNA, we have done some studies. In the technology action plan, we have identified something, but it was needed to go further to get some information and go to the feasibility studies, and some technical additional studies were needed to be ready to implement the different projects and or submit them to financial institution. So we made requests, and directly those institutions that have been identified through the technology action plan submitted those requests, and we get some positive response from the CTCN to develop some studies. And also some others, the institutions that have been identified conducted themselves in their sector some further studies, and sometimes implemented themselves the project that were identified. It's why in Senegal now you have many solar. Last week, the president launched 20 megawatt solar PV plant, and before the end of this year, we'll be at around 100 megawatt implemented just this year. So we focus on that because the stakeholders are convinced on the need to implement this kind of project. And also we have some power plant, wind farm, 15 megawatt in the first phase, and this will be around 50 in the next years. So, and we also, in our agency that deal with the energy efficiency, have started to implement this LED bulbs within many countries. So we start many. Some have been, we had a request to the CTCN to complement some studies, but also institutions that were involved in the process directly develop some projects. And also we report in our INDC many the studies conducted within our TNAs were the basis of some actions developed under our INDC. And it's why those we consider that will be implemented in soon. And what can we say? Just we have all of that. I led the presentation. The main point you have to stick on now that are very urgent is the linkage between the CTCN, the technology need assessment process, the CTCN, and the JEF, the financial institution, because it is needed to have a direct link between those three elements. Since you prepare your TNA with technology action plan as an output, we sometimes need to conduct some supplement studies under the CTCN. And when you develop bankable projects that need to be supported financially. So we need to work on this linkage between all of them. And also, in the preparation of the TNAs, we need to have more resources to develop more sectors. We did it this year in our national communication because we allow a small amount to go for in some other sectors, but it is needed to cover all the sector covered by our the different NDCs, and it's and we have to also to continue with the other partners. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, El Hadji, for presenting the case with Senegal. And thank you very much for highlighting in the case study, the technologies that you were able actually to acquire in Senegal as a result of the implementation of TNAs, and mainly the solar energy, wind energy, the LED lamps, the solar water heating, and the biomass. So it's really a practical example of how you did that. And the fact that you reported in the INDC studies, the TNAs, and that's really the link that we're talking about. So thanks very much for that. I did say that we'll have a little pause now for 5 minutes. If there are any quick question, remarks, so just please be brief and to the point. I'll take 2 or 3 maximum. So I've got a lady there. Let's start with you. So do we have a microphone?
Microphone,
please. At the backs, come in.
Thank you. Journalist from India. I represent 3 dailies and 2 TVs, so it's a bit complicated to tell you all. I understand from this morning that the CTCN has no money left. Okay, what they had is already finished. They've got so many requests that they don't know what to do. Now, given that condition, I listen and I find that there's dependency on the TNAs with the CTCN. How do you see this moving forward? How do we have every country's NDCs actually implemented? Can you tell me something to be positive?
Of course, of course. Thank you. Let me take another question. Is there another question? Okay. It's the lady at the back there.
Thank you. I am Rukia from Ethiopia. As you know, that technology is very necessary for gender. So Senegal presentation maybe explain what is this technology related to gender. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll take one last question from here. You can save yours to the next session. In the middle? Take the mic, please. Take the mic.
Yeah, this is a small question for Senegal. What happened for a dissemination of this all technology we selected? What happened on that? Thank you.
Okay. Right, thank you. So maybe we'll start with that, El Hadji, the easier one. What happened to dissemination of technologies that you talked about, you know, the LEDs, etc.?
Yeah, just to say that we started to implement our technology action plan, in which, as I said, we have solar. That was the study we conducted on the barrier analysis, the environment, and all the measure to remove the barriers. So we had some institutional actions that have been taken, but also real action on the ground. That happened on the solar PV sector. Because in the past, before we did that, and we did all the awareness at the policy level, at the political level, because Senegal planned to put in place many coal plants. We succeed with the TNAs, both, and the INDC, to talk with the very high level, the President of the Republic and the Prime Minister also, to discuss with a technical team, and we succeed to convince them to shift from coal to have gas supported by renewable energy instead of having coal. And with the price we have now on renewable energy, mainly solar PV, it becomes competitive with some support.
Thanks.
So we start to implement them, and we'll continue that way.
Okay, is that sufficient for you? Take the mic, please.
I think we have a citizen to help to help a country to make a dissemination for this this technology. I think it's very important for our country.
Okay, so I think he touched on that. He touched on that, and the CTCN is working on scaling up. So
we get some requests. We did some requests related to the TNA, to the technology action plans, and they are currently supported by the CTCN to conduct some additional studies.
Okay, thank you for that. Let me give the floor to Sarah to react to the two questions, one from India and one from Ethiopia. First one on the money for CTCN, but you don't have to answer that if you don't know. I'll answer it. But mainly the one on the lady from Ethiopia on the gender issue.
So to start with the gender issue, what we saw from the submitted TNA reports and the processes in the countries is that some of the countries are including criteria for the prioritized, which can capture also the aspects of gender when they actually prioritize technologies. It varies from country to country which aspects that they include in their assessments, but we also see that in their analysis of barriers, this also includes in many cases and I can say that we are currently in the preparation of the TNA phase 3, as said, starting next year. And for these new countries, we are planning to provide gender guidance so that we have more integration of gender aspects. On the linkages or the link with CTCN, of course, we cannot speak on behalf of CTCN because we are not CTCN. And CTCN is not the only institution or the only way to take up the technology action plans and take them further. We see this happening in many different ways. We have the technology champions, you could say, in the countries actually taking up the ideas coming from the TNAs and bringing them forward. So CTCN is definitely not the only way to take it forward. On the financial issues of CTCN, I think this should be raised in another forum, so to say.
Definitely, thank you. I'll just say briefly, because the lady from India asked the question, it's not true that there is no money left on CTCN. The CTCN needs more money, that's for sure, because the requests are increasing. So more countries coming into the CTCN to ask for support. There is a little money left. I don't know how much exactly, but the key thing is the CTCN, if it wants to support all the countries out there, there needs to be more financial support for it. And now there is, as you know, a good discussion on the link to finance, particularly to the Green Climate Fund. So watch that space. It's not true that there is no money left, but it's not enough to respond to everyone. Okay, let's move on to the other case studies. 3 case studies. The next one is Lebanon. I'm pleased to invite Mary Awad, who is a member of the Lebanese Ministry of Environment Climate Change team. And she specializes in both mitigation and adaptation policies. And she's the focal point and the coordinator of Lebanon's INDCs. So over to you.
Thank you. And I want to thank the organizers for putting this event together. It's important for us to see the link between the several different instruments under this process, how they link together. And my presentation today will delve into the Lebanese case of the current relationship between our Tna and our INDC. So just a quick Tna overview at the beginning. Our Tna identified and prioritized technologies that can contribute to mitigation and adaptation goals of Lebanon while meeting the national SDGs and priorities. Second, it identified the barriers hindering the acquisition, deployment, and diffusion of prioritized technologies. And finally, it developed the TAPs, specifying activities and enabled frameworks in order to facilitate the transfer, adoption, and diffusion of the selected technologies in Lebanon. This has been said on the panel before, so we selected 4 main sectors. For the mitigation sector, we selected power and transport because while we were developing the Tna, and it is still true today, the power and transport sectors are the most emitting sectors in Lebanon. So this is why they were prioritized. As for the adaptation, it was based on a vulnerability assessment, and it was assessed that the agriculture and water sectors in Lebanon were the most vulnerable. As per our vulnerability and adaptation study in our second national communication, average temperatures are projected to increase by 1 to 2 degrees above the current levels by the year 2040. So it was important for us to address those 2 sectors specifically in the adaptation. A quick overview over the prioritized mitigation technologies. They are here listed in front of you in red. They were prioritized based on their greenhouse gas reduction potential, their capital and operation and maintenance cost, their efficiency, and their sustainability. For the adaptation technologies, they were prioritized based on their adaptation potential, cost-benefit analysis, and co-benefits. Where are our Tna prioritized technologies now? Since we conducted the Tna in 2012, for the purpose of this side event, we actually saw that most of our Tna prioritized technologies have landed in our INDC. So for the power technologies, which were the CCGT, wind power, PV, and hydropower, first, a national renewable energy action plan developed by the Ministry of Energy and Water for a period 2011, 2015, then 2016, 2020. And we found that some of the prioritized technologies were actually identified in this National Renewable Energy Action Plan developed by another ministry. Second, the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Finance have prepared a feasibility study on the removal of fossil fuel subsidies as a way to make the use of CCGT and the other renewable energy technologies more appealing. Action is still needed to be taken to draft the legislative framework to support that specific policy. Third, back in Copenhagen, Lebanon pledged a 12% renewable energy target in its energy mix. So the Ministry of Environment, along with the Ministry of Finance, developed a study, which is the optimal renewable energy mix for Lebanon, which incorporates the capacity potential of the 3 identified technologies here, which were identified in Tna, which is the wind power, the PV, and the hydropower, with the assumption of meeting the estimated demand by 2020 in a number of scenarios, and showcases the importance of renewable energy and portfolio of electricity supply under the cost criterion. All of those 3 technology policies have landed in our INDC. So this is a first success story. Second, for the transport technologies, in the previous slides, we've seen that the bus rapid transit was one of the identified transport technologies to be prioritized, and eventually it was developed into a project by the Ministry of Public Works and Transport with the support of the World Bank and the EU. Also, it has been incorporated in the strategy for public transportation. For the fuel-efficient vehicles and hybrid vehicles, the Ministry of Environment has developed is in the stages of finalizing a NAMA for fuel-efficient vehicles and hybrid vehicles. We're in the stages of being finalized. Also, all these 3 technologies have found their way into our INDC. As for the adaptation technologies, for conservation, agriculture, and GAP, there's the Agri-Climat Regional Project funded by the EU, and with the aim of increasing resilience of farmers to the impact of climate change, the Lebanese Agricultural Research Institute has experimented the adoption of good agricultural practices and conservation agriculture in over 80 hectares of agricultural land and with 28 farmers in the Bekaa Valley. Following positive, encouraging results, the Ministry of Environment aims at disseminating these practices to a wider pool of beneficiaries depending on available funding. Also, around the Agri-Climat Regional Project, some limited effort has been undertaken to assess the survival rate of species of wheat and barley under different seasonal conditions and agricultural practices. More research is needed in this area once funding is available. These three technologies have found their way into the 2015-2019 Ministry of Agriculture strategy. And in fact, the Ministry of Agriculture strategy makes a large part of our adaptation targets in our INDC relating to agriculture. Finally, relating to the water technologies, sometimes not everything works out. And there was a project for the rainwater harvesting from roads, and a project has been included in the agriculture project, which was planned to start in 2012 at the Ministry of Agriculture through financing from the Adaptation Fund. Unfortunately, the project has still not been launched to date. For the rainwater harvesting from greenhouse tops, the Ministry of Environment has installed rainwater harvesting systems in 3 pilot sites around Lebanon in 3 different locations. Following positive results, the Ministry of Environment aims at disseminating this technology through a wider scale, and we are in the process of developing guidelines for farmers to replicate this technology. The third identified prioritized technology in the water sector was the Water Users Association, and it found its way in the Ministry of Energy and Water National Water Sector Strategy, which is also heavily mentioned in the adaptation section of our INDC. Now, just a quick overview of our INDC, just to put things into context. We developed our INDC first to identifying the relevant technologies, the barriers. Our greenhouse gas inventory, V&A, and cost estimation has helped us identify our reduction potential and adaptation need, which eventually resulted in our INDC. Now, for our mitigation targets, we have to cut CO2 emissions by 15% as an unconditional target and 30% conditional to finance capacity building and technology transfer. The main sectors in our mitigation INDC are the electricity, transport, forestry, and waste sectors. As for our adaptation part in our INDC, it's tackled through mitigation and adaptation co-benefits. Also, we tackled our most vulnerable sectors such as water, agriculture, health, forest, and biodiversity. I will not, as I am short on time, I will move on. I want to make one quick point that through all of this, from the TNA to the NAMA, to the INDC, and through the other policies and strategies, we found that the most valuable byproduct was the sustainable stakeholder engagement. It has been a really fruitful process to identify those same people who have went with the different institutions from the beginning till now and in the implementation of our INDC. This has worked through using the agendas and work of other ministries to integrate within the technology needs assessment, NAMA, and other policies led in INDC. We conducted meetings under their patronage and other ministries, and also we conducted targeted meetings with sustainable stakeholders. Next steps, final slide. But we foresee for INDC implementation and therefore technology needs assessment technologies, it's important to tackle the mitigation, the adaptation through a robust MRV system, which is backed up by adequate climate finance. Thank you for listening, and I'm ready to hear any questions.
Thank you very much, Mari, for this case study. And you highlighted 3 really key things: how the technologies that you highlighted in TNAs ended up in the INDCs. So that's really important. And the link to the national technology as well, which is really important. And then it was great when you finish about the fact that actually you need really sustainable stakeholder engagement in this process. And that's really critical in getting TNAs right, because you need to have all the stakeholders involved in that to help you do it. It's a shame that the rainwater harvesting from roads didn't kick off as you expected. Maybe you could share with the audience later on why is that. So it's good not just to share success stories, but it would be good to say why that didn't work. Was it for whatever reason? So thanks for that. So let's move on now to a case study from Mauritius. And I'm delighted to introduce Mr. Shiv Shiwo Badut, and I hope I pronounced that correctly, who's from the, he's the head of the climate change division at the Ministry of Environment in Mauritius, and he has over 20 years experience in the field of environment and sustainable development. So over to you for the case study of the Mauritius.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the invitation. So I know time is of essence, so I won't go too long in the process. Just to contextualize, the Mauritius TNA is that Mauritius is a small island off the coast of Africa. It's on the east coast, and because of our location, most probably we are one of the most vulnerable countries, I would say, according to the World Risk Report, right? Our emission too is not that huge, but we can also say that based on the inventory system we had, energy sector is the most polluting one, okay, in terms of the scale. In terms of the output of the TNA, we were one of the first batch countries that was supported by UDP and UNEP and GF to formulate our TNA. And of course, like all the TNAs, we run through a number of stakeholders engagement. Actually, that was one of our strengths. It was a decentralized empowerment approach. And again, like others said, I'm not going to repeat myself. The constraint, the challenge there was still the limited funding. But I can still say that the strength still there was the political commitment that came out of it after that process. That was also very important. Now, there's always a challenge with political commitment. Until the government of the day is there, is still supported. But when the government of the day is a new government, then you can imagine what happened. So it's not kind of eternal support that you always have politically. Now, in short, the 4 sectors that were analyzed, in our case, we opt to choose 3 adaptation sectors and 1 mitigation sector. And the 1 mitigation sector, obviously, is the energy sector, and where we explored the renewable energy options, okay, basically, as well as the energy efficiency in the processes, industrial processes. For the others, it was still the water sector, which is one of the main concerns for one of our small islets, as well as in Mauritius. The rain is, the total amount of water is decreasing by 8% over the years. So it's a major concern for us, for the tourism industry, for the agriculture, for the inhabitants, and so on. The second one is the agriculture itself in terms of food security. And third one is the coastal zone, which is also as an important sector in terms of the asset which sustain the tourism industry. So basically a number of at least 12 were retained, I would say. 12 technology options were retained there, and they're on this slide, so I'm not going to read through them. Okay, but the next one is just to show you the kind of outcome or result that came out of this TNA process. The very first thing is it's the integration into the INDC. Okay, actually that was a very helpful tool to help us and the people who work in the team together actually to envision what could be the pathway if we want to go to both enhance the resilience of Mauritius, but at the same time to move with some kind of emission pledges for emission reduction pledges. And actually, you can see it's there, the technology that were retained and the wording that were actually retained in the Mauritian INDC. So basically, we're talking of desalination for small island. We're talking of rainwater harvesting. We're talking of smart agriculture. We're talking of integrated pest and disease management. We're talking of integrated restoration of the dune and lagoon ecosystem, as well as use of appropriate method to reinvigorate the ecosystem in terms of sustainability, and at the same time implementation of measures in the wind as renewable energy and other measures. In terms of integration, in addition to the INDC, actually the INDC is one of the most latest one. We also had the, for the rainwater harvesting, the government itself has injected funding into that in terms of incentive. There's a 10-year action plan which have been prepared for the adoption of rainwater harvesting with incentive provided by local banks and the government itself. Schools and public facilities are encouraged to do rainwater harvesting. We also have the desalination. We have 3 plants which are operational, I would say, in one of the islets, which is Rodrigue. In terms of the IP in integrated pest and disease management, there is a project which is nearing finalization for funding through the Global Climate Change Alliance Plus with the EU. Okay, it's focused on smart agriculture, I would say. And of course, there is the micro irrigation, which is also being supported mostly by the government. Now, in terms of further integration, there is a funding that we secured from the Adaptation Fund Board in 2012, obviously with the input based on the TNA, and there it's meant for coastal rehabilitation in 3 areas, basically testing different approaches with regard to reef and ecosystem adaptation. We the next one is also that we also solicited support from CTCN with regard to identification of offshore outer islets, I would say, sand deposit. And there's one which is also we submitted to CTCN for consideration is assessment of the vulnerabilities of our port area in Mauritius, which normally is not able to operate fully because of surges and so on. And third one, obviously, is the wind sector, where we had the government and we had certain projects coming there. I'll come to the incentive later. But we do have 2 projects, one already approved as a NAMA, okay, for wind energy. And the second one is in the pipeline for the JEF6 in terms of energy efficient boilers and so on and so forth. So basically, I want some here, but just to tell you that, you know, TNA has been a very important output for the INDC, of course, and has been used for the mobilization of funding. But more importantly, I just want to add here, the last exercise that we did, or we just get approval 1 week before I came to COP here, is our 3rd national communication. And the multi-criteria analysis that we used in the TNA was very helpful actually for us to identify the options for mitigation options and even the adaptation options that could be used. Now, just to share quick experiences, we still have some of the challenges happening. It doesn't mean that by just implementing the project, it's the end of the way. We still have certain areas where we're still facing certain challenges, and it's good for me to mention them. I know it's 2 minutes, but I'll just go very quickly. When we're talking of the coastal zone and the soft measures, actually we still have a problem of sand deposit. It's not there. The amount is reducing because of climate change. And because of coral bleaching, we feel that this amount will further reduce. So how to sustain ecosystem approach is becoming another challenge. The other one is we did have certain public protests when we use harder engineering works. So which means for them, these are ISOs, and it's not really good for a tourism oriented country. Okay, we came to some other method, but still there are still challenges there. In terms of agriculture, although the approach, although the IPDM method is good, low cost, but the problem it's also happen when it's not fully efficient always. You do have certain condition where it might not be fully efficient. When we come to the desalination plant, all of us, we know that this desalination is very energy intensive. So which means that, you know, we have to use more power to produce water for the community. And on the other hand, we do have the problem of disposal of the brine. Okay, I will go quick with the other one. We had the renewable energy for the promotion of the renewable energy. And here also, being an island, it's not like a mainland country. We can't export on the grid. So we have limitation on the grid. And although the government started with a permit system to promote for the upscaling of solar photovoltaics, but eventually government had certain hurdles there, but came up with a new regulation allowing for 2 megawatt and things like that. We had a, just before the last one, yeah. In terms of energy efficiency, there is a new strategy and action plan, master plan, which has been just approved in September by the Council of the Ministers. But we still believe that in the long run, we may face some challenges in terms of monitoring the policies and action because of the lack of data. Okay, certain good firms are there. They have invested in terms of resources, capacities to sustain those energy efficiency options, but we feel that this may not be the case with all the firms, enterprise in Mauritius, and eventually capacity building is one of the key essential elements which might be needed. Last slide. Beyond the tap, we still require support. You know, it's not the end of the road. We still require support. There is a good question that was asked there, how to further mobilize in terms of how to implement, how to formulate proposal. And we still believe that CTCN and UDP are wonderful partners that can still, and UNDP, of course, UNEP, UNDP, UN system can help in formulating the support. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much for another very useful case study. So you highlighted the number of key things, particularly on how, again, the TNAs have been incorporated into the INDC's process. We saw that in the previous case studies as well. And thanks for highlighting the challenges as well, because obviously there are challenges remaining there, particularly the one you highlighted on how actually you monitor actions and impact. You don't allow you to do that, and I think that applies to so many cases. So thanks very much for highlighting that. So the next case study is from Thailand, and I'm very pleased to introduce Sirinya Lim, who's a policy analyst at the Science, Technology and Innovation Policy Office at the Ministry of Science and Technology of Thailand, and she's actually the designated entity, the national designated entity for CTCN for Thailand. So that means the focal point from Thailand for CTCN. So over to you.
Thank you very much. It's my honor to be here, and I'm happy to share Thailand experience and lesson learned on the implementing TNA and TAP. Thailand participated in the TNA Global Project in the first round, and we prioritized 4 sectors: water resource management and agriculture for the adaptation sector, and modeling and energy for the mitigation. My office, STI, is the coordinator of the project. We consult with 4 national consultants, and we report the TNA to the TNA committee, which consists of government, business sector, academia, and civil society. So we started the project in 2010. It finished in 2012, and the result of the TNA is part of Thailand Climate Change Master Plan 2015 to 2050, and in 2014, we selected 2 important sectors, which are energy and agricultural sector, to do the TAP. In 2015, the TNA results is part of Thailand INDC, and also the TAP for agricultural sector is adopted by the Climate Change National Committee. Our next step is to drive TNA to become an input for NAP and also to become an input for the climate change technology roadmap. So the TNA project is the country's first official technology needs assessment. It was reviewed by a structure committee, and it was widely accepted within the country and also internationally. And because we work closely with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, who is the Thailand focal point, it really helped drive TNA and TAP to become input for National Climate Change Master Plan and other related plans. And my office, the STI, is being both Tna Coordinator and NDE, so we can streamline technology transfer requests, which coming through NDE to and implementation to stream into the TNA technology identified in the TNA. And we still continue our work on the climate change technology roadmap for the INTC. And in the process, we are receiving a lot of feedbacks from stakeholders. So there are some new technologies not identified in the TNA and TAB that we might have to consider. So with the fast changing pace of the technology and the situation, we think that Thailand TNA need to be updated. But when I say updating the TNA, I mean we have to go forward and implementing the TNA, and when we got the feedback, and that's how we update our TNA. So for the domestic implementation, as I say that we start our TNA in 2012, and before we reach the 10 year of studies, in 2016, we try to suggest government what is the first step to be done. So besides updating the TAP, we try to do the feasibility study on the technical side and political side. For the technical, we do the stock taking and benchmarking our technology capacity with foreign countries. And we go selling ideas to many government authorities and stakeholders, including this is the agricultural tab. So we go meet with the farmers, and we also specify the plan for each technology in this policy recommendation, and we propose the pilot project. So in the process that we go and talk with a lot of stakeholders, in this COP, we may talk about adaptation or mitigation, I mean, in the agricultural sector. But when we talk to other people outside this arena, they will talk about other things like standards, safety and traceability, other targets of the sustainable development. They also talk about the competitiveness, cost reduction. And when we go talk with a government officer, they will ask whether our TAP comply with the country future. So we have to take all of these drivers into our TAP. So we have planned for each technology identified for our agricultural TAP. We have planned for the crop improvement. We have planned for precision farming, and we have planned for forecasting and early warning system. And we found that the most important element in the plan is the technology transfer process. So we spend a lot of time in thinking how to make the technology becoming sustainably adopted by the farmers. And here's our pilot project. We are trying to develop a decision supporting system for in farmer version, because most of the decision supporting system version right now is all for the government officers. So because we believe that weather, soil and water knowledge and information is critical to farmers, and unfortunately that Thai farmer cannot access those kind of information. And we also believe that knowledge and information will lead to the change of the behavioral to make our farmer become more resilient to climate change. And we believe that DSS in the form of freeware will have the potential to make this information accessible to all level of farmers, because right now all the farmers, not all, but most of the farmers in Thailand, they can use Facebook, Line, and all the social media to communicate. And the development of the DSS will benefit the development of all technology identified in the tab, because it's required database in weather database. It requires database from crop and pest, and also require database of soil and water. And the most important and critical part is that it requires farmer to react actively to the system, which is called the activity log. We also propose roles for stakeholders in this pilot project. We propose that the government have to help the private sector to build database infrastructure, and we hope the government will create a matching fund for the private sector so that the service is free. We propose that the government will create adoption fund for the farmer so that the technology will be adopted by the farmer. And the most important stakeholder is the social enterprise or the private sector who will deliver the technology to the farmer. And our final target is the behavioral change. We hope our farmer will have the science-based knowledge to do their farming, and it will also satisfy the target of the country in competitiveness and also reducing environmental impact. And here is our potential partner. Dointai is the company that already have the platform. It is a startup Thai company. They create the platform called Food Wisdom, and they have active user already, and they more of their users are organic farmers. So the system has a lot of features that we identify in the TAP. So our experience and challenge, the action plan and the pilot project were adopted by National Climate Change Committee already. And because of our plan is flexible, when we go talk to stakeholder, we can adapt our plan to meet their agendas. And also we have the private partners. I think this is the most important thing that can make the plan success. Well, but for the challenges, I think that we still need technology support and financial support because right now Thailand do not have the government do not have the budget specifically for the climate change project yet. So that would be all. Thank you.
Thank you very much for another good case study where you highlighted particularly the adaptation in the agriculture sector. And thanks for highlighting the fact that if you really want technology to be sustainable, then it has to be adopted by the farmers in the case of the example you gave, but also how knowledge and information is so important if you want to change the behavior of the farmers to adopt the technology. And then finally, I was glad that he highlighted actually the private partners and how that's again important for this. So thanks very much, and thank you to all the speakers who highlighted the case studies. There's so many things that were shown there on the things that worked, particularly in their national context. So we have about good 15 minutes for reactions, for questions. So please just be brief on your question or your reaction and make sure you take the microphone. With the lady at the back there, and then the lady here and gentleman there.
Thank you. Dr. Moahid Fattaib, researcher in the National Center for Research, Sudan. Actually, I was a member in the TNA Sudan, and we published our report in 2012. Actually, I like the Thailand experience. What I have seen that the process is continuing till this year. There is just short question. This process is adopted by the government only, or there is a fund from UNEP or other? Because you see, since in Sudan, our experience, since we submit the report, nothing happened. No movement in the national movement, and we heard nothing about the UNEP or other interested organizations.
Okay, thank you. You want to answer the question now? It's a question for the Thailand case study. You said that the project is continuing. Is the funding coming from the government, or is it something remaining from what you had from UNEP or?
Actually, because our partner is a private sector, so they are matching the fund with the fund is coming from my office. It's only a seed money, very, very small amount of money. Uh, so, but this is a pilot project. So we hope that if it succeeds and get good feedback from our users, so next year we might develop a bigger plan and find the financial support from somewhere else.
Okay, thank you. So we'll take the lady there and gentleman here. Yeah, lady there.
My name is Bess from Indonesia. I'd like to direct my comment to Sarah Trira. Yeah, it's about.
Can the technician turn the microphone up, please? We can hear you well.
Okay, how funding agency prioritize the countries that may receive financial support? Is it based on the carbon emitted in the countries or based on the activities or something else? Thank you.
Thank you. Sarah, you want to take that?
Sure. So far, the process has been that countries have expressed an interest in participating or joining the technology needs assessment project. So this is how it has been done. And then on top of that, it has been decided to focus only on LDCs and SIDS for the next round of countries, so to say.
Okay, thanks. Gentleman here.
Yeah, thank you. It's really good to see how countries have actually moved since the development of their technology action plans and trying even to get funding for implementation, which is really something very important also to share with other countries. But I would like also to come back to the suggestion made by one of the presenters, which is related to the need for a linkage between the CTCN process, the TNA process, and the Green Climate Fund, and why not also with the Adaptation Fund. I think this is a very critical point that was even raised since other COPs. I remember it was also raised during the Paris COP. I would like to hear from your perspective on specifically the how. How do you think this could be done? I'm Musana Abu Mahmouda from Tna Energy, based in Niger. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hang on. Anyone want to answer this question? I think this is a question that is being negotiated actually as we speak. So I don't think we want to say anything on that. Or Sarah maybe wants to add something.
I could maybe add that the GCF is expressing an increasing interest in picking up on the actions and activities identified through the TNA processes, since it's a clear, there's a clear, you could say, it's clear that the TNAs are country-driven and that they're actually grounded in national stakeholder-driven processes, so that the actions identified within the TNAs are supposedly, I think, having an increasing interest from the GCF of being supported.
Okay, thanks. So good question from here and then in the middle
just
there.
one question. I am Sambafal from Tna Energy. I want to direct my question to all of the panelists. It's related to the engagement of the private sector, but maybe the Thailand cases could elaborate more on how they get engaged the private sector in the implementation of the PRR. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, during the process of selling our project ideas to many stakeholders, and we just happened to meet this company, and they are already doing great job in this platform system. So we just contact them and we explain our TAP idea, and they just happen to want to work with us. So, and because this actually, even I call them a private sector or a company, but the objective, the company is a social enterprise. So they didn't really focus on the business part. And it's a very small startup company that try to do new things, and they are technology based. So I think, yeah, the company is our potential partner. And Hope I answer your questions.
Okay, thank you. Middle there. Yeah, it's working.
Yeah, thank you. Just to answer Musa, the question raising is very important, and I'm member for a technology executive committee, and this morning we discussed on that for linking for TNA, for INDC and CTCN, and also the financial matter, Green Climate Fund, and Adaptation Fund. I think in the draft text, we try to move forward for to found a solution for this this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got CTCN, the lady in the middle, and the lady there.
Good afternoon, Jason Spenceley with the CTCN. Thank you for the excellent presentations. Just a point to add on the linkages for these various support mechanisms. As priorities, highest priority technology ideas are identified through TNAs, we encourage and invite those some of those, if the party would like to submit those to the CTCN as requests for technical assistance. So we can provide some initial support, right, based on them. One of the top priorities for, or criteria or eligibility criteria for requests to the CTCN is that they're based on planning, substantive planning processes in country, including TNAs. And we see that, I think it's about 60%, if I'm not mistaken, of the requests to CTCN are based directly on TNAs. We're also seeing an increasing trend in parties requesting support to remove a barrier, to scale up deployment of a technology, to be financed from the finance mechanism, GCF or Adaptation Fund. So we provide a technical assistance which could help underpin the substantive feasibility analysis type work that could potentially go into a project proposal to the finance mechanism. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's good. The lady behind you. The middle. Yeah.
Thank you. So I would like to come to the technology implementation and the CTCN as well. Most of the time, the most easy thing is to identify the technology needs in the countries. And the most difficult one is to effectively implement those technologies that have been previously identified. And I understand that through the CTCN, one of the activities is to support countries to develop requests. But for the effective implementations, I would like to know if in the process of strengthening the CTCN, there will be a component or a facility that will be created or included to help those countries, because that's very important to effectively implement the technologies. And in most of the countries, it's not easy to raise funds from government authorities. And whether if you succeed to raise those funds, there will be not enough to help you effectively implement your project at a national-wide level. And I would like to know, and I think that that will be very important if the CTC can go ahead, can go further the development of requests and try to finance the implementation, even if that is at a limited stage. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I might come back to Jason if he wants to add anything, but he just said that actually about 60% of the requests that goes to CTCN are based on the outcome of TNAs. I don't know if you want to add anything, Jason or Sarah, do you want to add something?
Okay, I will try to answer, and then maybe I'll hand over to Jason if what I'm saying is not correct. But CTCN is not implementing projects as such. But we are, I could say, in discussions between CTCN, UNEP DTU partnership, and the Green Climate Facility to elaborate more on a service providing as a project preparation facility, which is picking up, for example, ideas from the TNA processes or project in the countries, and preparing project proposals for the GCF based on this. So that is coming together, the UNFCCC partnership. We're supporting countries in their TNAs, CTCN who are supporting countries in taking those further, and then linking it up with the GCF.
Thank you. Jason, do you want to come in? There's the mic behind you there.
Thank you for that clarity. CTCN is not a fund. How it's been established under the Conference of the Parties is that under the technology mechanism and being the operative body, one of the services we provide is technical assistance to remove barriers for scaling up or deployment of technology. We don't finance, the fund is of course under the finance mechanism, GCF, Adaptation Fund, GEF. However, and this is how a number of parties are approaching us on the linkages, we can provide technical assistance to help develop the concepts and the visions and the substance of the proposals, if you will, to seek funding. Because also our assistance is very modest scale, relatively accessible, quick, relatively quick, but small scale. Nothing on the scale of GCF, Adaptation Fund, GEF. So again, you could use our technical assistance to develop project concepts to get large scale funding, but we don't finance projects as per the guidance of the COP.
Okay, thanks. But the point you raise is really important because the main issue about TNAs is implementation. So you're absolutely right. So a lot of countries who carry out their TNAs, but they need the support to translate those project ideas from the tabs into projects, into something real. So you're absolutely right. There's still a challenge there. So what we've shown through the case studies is what's been happening, but we want more of that, of course, to happen. So we don't want countries just to do the TNAs and stop there. It has to lead to those projects actually happening and lead into technology development and diffusion. I had a lady on the left first. Yeah. There.
Thank you, Marjorie Muna from Perspective Climate Change.
Okay.
One question on mitigation that has been approached by the presentation from Lebanon. How are the technology action plan coordinated with the development of NAMA in your countries?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, just you talked about the linked with NAMA and the technology action plans. So it was not only a question directed to Lebanon, but also to the other countries. That is there special reflections on how to link those plans to the development of NAMAs? That
Okay.
Okay, thanks. We did the prioritization process for the NAMAs years ago, and we came out with two, which the first was the fuel efficient vehicle, and then the second was a waste NAMA. But others have been, the other priorities for NAMAs have been put out as well, and they are very much relevant to the technologies that have been identified in the technology needs assessment. We just want to, there's a lack of capacity in developing a lot of NAMAs for the moment, so we are focusing on the two we have for the moment. And depending on how, when we submit them to the NAMA facility, and depending on this experience, we will see how we can increase capacity and increase funding to develop other NAMA proposals, which are very much relevant to the mitigation technology needs assessment.
Okay, thanks. I think that the Mauritius, if you want to share also the link with the NAMA, if there was any NAMA in Mauritius?
Yeah, we don't have any NAMA yet already formulated for Mauritius, but at least the TNA process at least helped us to come up to secure funding, and in the formulation of a proposal for at least what we want in that proposal is to formulate a low carbon development strategy in the long run, as well as one NAMA project which is for the wind sector, wind power sector. So basically, the point is the process that was run in the TNA and the whole extensive technical assessment was actually very helpful in formulating that proposal.
All right, thank you. We have time for one more question. Yeah. The mic, please.
Thank you. My name is Shafiqullah Fahim. I'm representing Indiana University here. My question goes to the representative from the Mauritius. You mentioned that there is a reversion on the policy implementation once the government changes. And how are you addressing that? And is it showing a shortcoming in Tna process, or what is the reason? And how are you selling these decisions to the local population, and how can UNEP can help you in implementing it more efficiently? Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, this is the toughest part of the question. Actually, yes, government change, new philosophy come with, there are new philosophies, and not necessarily the same old that was approved are maintained. But to some extent, as far as certain policy areas, they have been strengthened. For example, with the new government, there has been the INDC that they have themselves approved, which means that we have more political backing now through an INDC. And the INDC already integrate the component of the Tna. So this is one good way. The second one is like we in all we are going further. In most of the cases, we are going further. I've not seen any case where we've gone back in terms of policy. But what we are saying is most probably government change process, we have a lot of evolution happening. We did our Tna in 2011, 2012, and now we are close to 2016 and 17. And most probably we need to re-look at those Tna approaches from the local perspective. And this is where most probably we might need further support, because there are new technologies on the market. There are new way of looking at things. The government's a new government. They are more keen to go further. So which means that we need to match a bit more the political support we are receiving. So this is where most probably we might need to relook at the Tna in terms of deliverable, and reassess whether new mitigation options or new technology might be more feasible instead of that was retained.
Okay, well, thank you very much. So before we finish, I just want to make one point, and I know Vladimir has one announcement to make. Just one point to sum up really the importance of Tna. So you heard so many case studies, and they all mentioned so many similar sectors and technologies. So they talked about power, renewable energy and energy efficiency, transport, agriculture, particularly in the case of food security, water, coastal zones, and early warning systems. And this just brings me to the importance of the South-South cooperation. And I'm glad they've got our colleagues from the government of Korea here, who just had really an excellent side event at lunchtime, looking at the importance of South-South cooperation in helping the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And we talk about the NDCs and TNAs and the role of CTCN and the whole institutions within the UNFCCC process. So actually, the other application from this is that you all have so many things in common to share, and there are other countries who haven't actually thought about implementing their TNAs yet, but the opportunity is there actually to do some South-South cooperation on this. So I'll stop it here. Thanks to all the panelists and all the presenters. And please join me to give them a big round of applause. And thank you to all of you also for joining us and staying until the end. And let me just hand over to Vladimir before you go for one announcement.
And on behalf of the UNFCCC Secretariat, I would like to thank also Mr. Zitouni Odada for a brilliant job of moderating this side event. Thank you, Zitouni. And also to all these panelists and UNEP UDP to make this possible. They even cooperated with us on the posters you see on the wall. I hope they will stay here when you can read more about concrete examples of Tna implementation. And I would like to announce another side event will continue in this room at 18:30 until 20:00. This will be on technology mechanism, enhancing climate action. So please stay with the UNFCCC Secretariat technology team on this very interesting side event. And last but not least, if you have also questions which are continuing on the CTCN and CTCN support, there will be also this evening a side event, focus side event on the TEC and on the Technology Executive Committee and CTCN activities also. There you can ask your questions and of course be responded with the CTCN experts. So again, thank you very much for attending and stay in touch with us.
Thank you. Excellent. Thanks everyone. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Really. Yeah.
Good case study, actually.
So
you've been
and as you can see, I think we have
been to Beirut a couple of times. Fantastic. Yeah. Yes. Are we on time? 5 minutes?
6.